Welcome everyone to another weekly edition of the Argentina Brief, this time for the week of Monday, August 3rd. Cracks in the president's popularity on one side, blockbuster corporate earnings on the other, and the latest central bank survey, so let's get right into it. Argentine bond prices fell late last week against the grain of appreciations seen in Mexican and Brazilian instruments, and the reason seems to have been the latest poll from AtlasIntel, the same pollster that correctly called Milei's 2023 win and more recently the Colombian elections. Milei's disapproval climbed from 62.4% in July, according to AtlasIntel, and disapproval was heaviest among women, the young, and lower earners. Bloomberg Economics still thinks he has decent odds for re-election, but the readings just aren't convincing enough right now to take pressure off Argentine assets. Speaking of Milei, the president spent the end of the week abroad. On Thursday, he was in Ecuador, where he signed deals with President Noboa, and on Friday, he flew to Colombia for the swearing-in of Abelardo de la Espriella, the new right-wing president who's replacing the leftist Gustavo Petro. Milei stood alongside Spain's King Felipe VI and the presidents of Chile and Ecuador, another sign of Latin America's rightward drift. Back home, Economy Minister Luis Caputo wasn't having any of the polls. He reminded everyone that pollsters had predicted a blowout loss for Milei last October before the government ended up winning at the national level by 17 points in those midterms. Caputo also flatly ruled out the need for a devaluation in Argentina. In his words, if competitiveness came from a weaker currency, Argentina would be the world champion in competitiveness because the dollar has gone up from 1 to 1,500 over the last couple of decades. Instead, the bet is on a gradual reduction of the tax burden, stability, and less bureaucracy. Regarding lagging sectors of the economy, such as the manufacturing sector, Caputo said that countries like Australia do phenomenally well and have no need to produce things like cell phones or cars at the domestic level. So a message for Argentine industry. But forecasts and hard data aren't coming in too hot. The economy likely shrank in the second quarter. 5 private consultancies see a drop of up to 1%. And on Thursday, the central bank's own survey of economists confirmed this, pegging the Q2 contraction at 0.4% and trimming growth for the year. On the flip side, there were 2 quiet wins for the government. Bank loan arrears appeared to have eased for the first time in 19 months, and July tax revenue grew faster than inflation. Now on to the corporate news. MercadoLibre, Latin America's e-commerce and fintech giant, reported record sales of over $10 billion and its fastest growth in 4 years in the second quarter. But the stock still slid on the Nasdaq the next day, falling about 5% on thinner margins, and the company admitting something worth noting: weaker consumer demand in Argentina, in spite of the fact that e-commerce growth in the country is still clocking in at a seemingly healthy 38% year over year. And quite an interesting headline: Aerolíneas Argentinas, nationalized by Kirchnerism back in the day and famous for its huge annual losses, will now pay income tax for the first time. The airline has become profitable under the Javier Milei administration. And in the energy sector, Pampa Energía crushed estimates in the second quarter and received a green light also for its massive urea plant project, the biggest investment in its history as it keeps diversifying sources of income. YPF, for its part, which will release its own earnings this week, sold 2 conventional Mendoza fields for $405 million to keep focusing all of its efforts on the Vaca Muerta shale play. That's it from me this weekend on the weekly edition of the Argentina Brief. Don't forget to follow us on X for the full thread with all of the details, as well as the YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts accounts for the monthly hour-long podcasts. Episode 5 is now out.